Okay, so welcome everybody. We're here on Bava Metzia Daf Yud at the Mishnah. Ra'a et Metzia v'nafal aleho ba'acher v'chzik ba ze shechzik ba zacha ba. Jacob, you want to read the Mishnah? I just read it, but you can read it again.
Yes. Ra'a et Metzia v'nafal laha uva acher v'chzik ba ze shechzik ba zacha ba.
Okay, so what's the Mishnah saying?
So if someone sees an object, and then he falls on it, it falls on it to claim it, and then someone else comes and grabs it. The one that grabs it is the one that merits it, is zocha with it to acquire
And without recourse to anything that we learn in the Gemara or any of the Mefarshim, what would you say the most simple way to understand the Mishnah? How would you understand the Mishnah if you knew nothing except, what's written there? Why is it that the one that she'exzik ba zachaba?
I mean, if it's written specifically with a language of hachazik, it seems to imply a stronger grasping or acquiring than just falling on it. That would be what I would assume based on reading the Mishnah.
In other words, he's what do you mean by stronger? Stronger in what sense?
I mean, we have a better sense that he's the one who's actually holding it and acquiring it than one who just falls on it.
In other words, the acquisition goes by the one who's using his digits. His fingers are more a better way of claiming something than falling, even though the one who fell was first.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't, but like belly fat is not a way of acquiring something. Okay. Joel, what do you got?
Well, I just think, like in sports, not that I, of course, watch sports, but let's just pretend. There's the rules about like having control versus touching something, right? You have to have positive control, and falling on something not be positive control of something, right? You're not really holding it. You just, you're touching it, but not, like you don't actually have control over the object at this point.
Right. So. Right. Man is unique in that he has a opposable thumb, and that is how he acquires. Also, the female gender has also opposable thumbs. I didn't mean to exclude anybody, notwithstanding raccoons and maybe lemurs. But okay, so fine. Okay, that's enough. Let's go on here, Jacob. Read a little more. So now wait. Yeah, so go ahead. This Mishnah, guys, you've all read the Gemara. Is this a Gemara that starts explaining the Mishnah, or is this a Gemara that starts from left field?
I would say it starts, at first glance, it seems to start from left field.
Exactly. I don't know, for some reason this has been interesting to me, more sports, yes. For some reason this is interesting to me all of a sudden this year, that some Gemaras, like especially in the beginning of a parak, they start explaining the Mishnah. This is just a statement of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish once said, so go for it.
Amar Reish Lakish, Mishum Abba Kohen Bardala, Arba Amot Shel Adam Konot Lo B'chol Makom. My timer, Shekinu Rabbanan Delo Atilan Suye. So Reish Lakish said in the name of Abba Kohen Bardala, the 4 amot of a person acquire for him in any place. And what's the reason? The Rabbanan decreed this so that we wouldn't come to, or so people wouldn't come to fighting.
Right. So what's the fight? So what's the scenario that there would no longer will be fighting in? Here, wait. Here, Aaron, go for it.
What seems strange is the scenario we could imagine someone fighting in is exactly the scenario of our Mishnah. But it's not presented as a refutation or challenge to the Mishnah. It seems to be presented derech hagav, as Jacob said.
Exactly right. But so aside from the Mishnah, what would be another case that's not exactly our Mishnah? What would be another case?
I'm like walking down the street. I see a nice button. I'm reaching to pick it down, to pick it up, and pick it up. And Noam runs over and snatches it out of my hand.
No, not out of your hand.
No, sorry, not out of it. Snatches it right before my fingers are about to.
In other words, you see it, you're an old man, and you're slowly reaching down to get it, and some young guy comes along and quickly grabs it before you have a chance. Or even you just saw it there and you said, I'm gonna pick it up in 5 minutes. I'm right now smoking my cigarette. But it's right, and then somebody comes and grabs it. You say, wait, that's mine. And so we need to know what the solution is. He steals the base, if you want more, whatever. He steals this item but you added one key point, which is that you saw it. I think that's a fair assumption. I don't think that I think you have to have seen it, be conscious of it, and now somebody comes along and tries to grab it. And so you have first claim on it. By the way, the falling case the Mishnah could be differentiated and say you fell on it. You just not intentionally fell on it. You just fell on it. You fell and it was under your belly. And then somebody reached in and grabbed it and said, oh, I didn't know there was that coin there. But it's mine because I fell on it. Maybe you could say that he didn't know. You could put in knowledge to differentiate. But that's a complete, but let me step back. That's a complete invention. We don't see, but I think it's reasonable to say that you don't acquire something if you don't know it's there.
But it says Ra'ah to Metzia.
Where?
In the
Mishnah.
Ra'ah to Metzia v'nafal. You're right. Okay, so yeah, good point. Sorry.
But it still seems plausible to me that we know he saw it. Right, just by, I don't know. He says like, oh, look, what a nice book or whatever. But we don't, I wondered whether what was going on in the Mishnah is a concern about whether we know that the falling is meant as an act of acquisition. Whereas when the person reaches out and grabs the thing, we know they're meaning to gain control.
Right.
But it's a little tricky
know.
because of this.
He could have seen it and still accidentally fallen.
Yeah.
So
in other words, you could say, oh, look, that's a nice thing. And then you like trip over something.
Right. We don't know what intentionality there is in the falling.
Right.
But we do know that I correctly, Aaron, you say that he saw it. So he does know that it's there. We don't know what the intentionality is of the falling. But anyway, I think
it is a strange way to pick up a Metzia, right? Like Joel's background notwithstanding. Like it's a strange way if you think that this is a mode of acquisition and the person wants to acquire it, it's a weird way to do it.
Well, maybe he'll get there sooner. They'll get there sooner.
Yeah, it's a form of claiming. Again, it's like it's the tackle pile, right? It's like presumably, I think this makes the most sense if there's like a really appealing Metzia that you're like, I have to get to it before this other person does. You like dive at it. Or like, if I throw my body on top of it, it's mine.
And the Mishnah says no. Joel, what do you got?
Well, I through this whole sugya in the background of my head is this whole thought of when people act in the world, are they thinking about like, oh, I learned this Mishnah and this is how you do Kinyan, or are they just like, I see an object go, right? It's like they're not like so interested in that. That's not how people.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Mishnah is describing a mitziyut, a case that happened, and what's the din? It's not, and in fact, if the person, you're right, people don't necessarily know Mishnayot. I mean, yeah. Right? Is that what you're saying? That he's not thinking about it. Okay, let's go on. So that is the statement of Reish Lakish, and it's in a vacuum. Is he just saying Arba Amos Kone Ladam Bekomako? And so the people shouldn't come to fight. And now we bring this Jacob, keep going. Amar Abaye.
Amar Abaye, Motiv Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. Paya. Amar Rava, Moti Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi Nezikin. So,
Right. So this is like a headline. We're not, there's two attacks, and these are the two different attacks. One is Abaye, and one is Rava. And now we're going to go into the first one.
Yep. So Amar Abaye motiv Rabbi Chia bar Yosef Peah, Natal Mikzat Peah v'Zorak al Shar, Ein lo ba klum, Nafal lo alaha pras talito alaha, Mavirin oto himena, V'chein bo omer shichcha. V'ia mart arba amot shal adam kono lo b'chol makom, Niknu le arba amot didei.
Oh,
So if he took part of the paya and then he
so this is a mission in Peah.
exactly. Yeah.
And he took some of the sheaves that he collected.
Then threw it on the rest of the sheaves that were still to be collected as an attempt to claim those sheaves. He doesn't get anything. If
We don't,
he
right. And we'll see in the Rambam what this means, Ein lo klum. You could say it means he doesn't get anything more than his original pieces that he got, or you could say he
Right.
doesn't even the original pieces he doesn't get. Does Ein go klum.
right.
Is to read the word, what it means is he doesn't get anything. Now, but the key part is the next part, the nafal lo.
If he fell on it, or he spread his talent on it, again as an attempt to claim the unclaimed sheaves, we remove him from it. And so too with Omer Shechta. That
Right. So that's the Mishnah. So the Mishnah is saying he doesn't get to claim it with the talid like this. By the way, I once was in a hotel and these British people, it was everybody was there was British except for me. And they had come out at 6:30 in the morning or 7 in the morning and put their towels on every single chair at the pool. There was not a single chair available. And there was actually signs in the hotel saying you're not allowed to do this. And there was not a single person. And when I came, I actually had gotten up earlier than them because my children were small and we had woken up early and had breakfast. And then we went out and we wanted to actually use the pool. And there was not a single soul there. No lifeguard, nobody, just towels everywhere. So you can't make a claim with a towel. I did the wrong thing. What you should do in this case is take all the towels and pile them up on the floor. And then if somebody says, that's the rules. You don't have to claim that you did that. But I did a very stupid thing. I took away the towels of just one person and sat there. Now, it was very obvious that I was the one who took away the towels of that one person. But it's not a proper claim. You can't just claim something. You can't claim something for somebody, but you can't claim something for yourself by throwing your talus over it. Okay, so that's the case, and that's my story. Now we didn't bring a kasha. Here's the kasha. So keep going. Imris.
Imris arba amot shel adam konot lo b'chol makom niknu le arba amot didei. So, and if you say the statement of Rish Lakish that the 4 amot of a person acquire for him in any place, let the 4 amot of this ani in the field acquire for him.
In other words, in which case, what's the 4 amot case?
Well, I mean, I was just saying the statement of Reish Lakish. It's a statement.
Yeah, Reish Lakish says the Arba Amos, but the Mishnah brought us a lot of different cases. Is he talking about the talus case? Which case is he talking about? The talus case, presumably I threw the talus, it's a big talus. It's not necessarily within my 4 amos. I think it's on a particular part of the Mishnah that we're bringing the kasha.
the Nafalo Alaha.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Nafal
His
so he,
physical body and
so he
what-
shouldn't have acquired it. Well, Mapi told me you're taking it away from him. He acquired it. He actually acquired it. It's a proper form of Kinyan.
Mhm.
We just, according to Reish Lakish, that's a proper form of Kinyan, just by it
Yeah.
being in his proximity. So
Mhm.
falling should work essentially because then it's in my Arba Amos. So I shouldn't have to machzik it.
Yeah.
So what's the answer the Gemara brings? The first attempt at an answer?
So Hachab Mayaskinan. Dilo Amar Akne. So here's what are we dealing? They didn't say I acquire this.
He has to say, I acquire it in order for him to acquire in this weird way. If he picks it up, then fine. But if he tries to acquire with Arba Amos, he has to say Akne.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, but the Gemara doesn't like that.
Yeah.
By the way,
he-
who's talking here? Wait, this is who brought this bright? This is Abaye, right?
Well, it's Rabbi
Abaye brought
Bar
it.
Yosef, and Abaye is quoting him. But yeah.
Oh, sorry, Abaye brought it, right? Abaye's not talking. Yeah, correct. Rav Chia Bar Yosef is talking, and then what's this answer? Who's answering? They say we answered. We said no because he didn't say akne. He didn't say I want to buy, acquire it.
Mhm.
Who's saying that? I mean, it's a trick question.
I mean, I would think it's one of the like later redactors.
Yeah, something like that. What David Weiss Livni calls the Stama de Gemara, right? Or what everybody calls Stama de Gemara, but it's just the Gemara sort of saying that. The redactor, yeah. The Gemara says it's let's say it like this, it's an unnamed opinion. It's the Tartsan, we'll call it the Tartsan. The one who is trying to mitaretz, the Tartsan. Okay. So go on.
So
And now this is like the Makshan. This is already probably not Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. It's probably just the generic Makshan continuing and saying, no, that's not a good answer, Tartsan.
mhm.
Go ahead.
The Tikun Rabbanon Kilo Amar, my have, Kaven de Nafal Gali Date in a
No, you didn't read that right.
Of the Tikun Rabbanon Kilo Amar, my
have. No, my have.
have.
Translate.
So, and if the Rabbanan decreed when he didn't say anything, what is their decree? What are they saying? Is that
Let's try. Wait, anyone else have a different way of translating it? No offense, but I want to get it a little bit better. Don't be shy. Jacob is not offended. Here, Joel, go for it.
Okay, if the rabbis made a decree, him not saying, so what if he didn't say anything? There was a
Right.
decree, like it doesn't matter if he did or didn't say anything. Once the rabbis decreed it, it is the way it is.
Right. Ki lo amar, my have. Even if he didn't say, so what? That's how you say so what? My have.
okay?
Right, but I
In
think
other words,
the-
what was the Havamina? The Havamina is this is a weird way to acquire. So therefore you need to say that's what you're trying to do. And I'm trying to acquire by 4 hours. He says, no. Once the rabbis have put it into the Geder, into the category of Kinyan, then it works like any other Kinyan and it works. You don't have to announce what you're doing. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So he says, no, this is a bad attempted answer. That's what I understand. Now go on.
Kevan dinafal gali te dibinifila nichale dinikne, but ama lo nicha le dinikne. So when he fell, since he fell on it, he revealed his knowledge that falling on it is good enough for him to acquire, but his Arba Amot weren't good enough for him to acquire. So it's the idea
Wait. Now, again, translate that again.
that when he fell on it, he revealed his intention that feeling that falling was good enough for him that he would acquire, but
Not good enough, though, not good enough. Nichale was the way he wanted to use, the method was noach for him, was the type of method, you have to translate like that. It was the type of method that he wanted to use. Nichale de nikne. He was trying, he clarified to the world that he revealed to us that he was trying to acquire through this falling. And then the next 6 words.
And he wasn't acquiring with the method of Arba Amot.
Exactly. Arba Amot lo nichale. He wasn't attempting to acquire with Arba Amot. In other words, he was dafka. If it would be stam, a person would just come and stand there, then it would work. But if he does an action which shows that he's trying to acquire in some other way, which is not the takana, then we don't let him use the takana. Then the takana doesn't. He's not trying to use the takana, so the takana doesn't work. He wasn't. In other words, if it's neutral, fine. If he wants to use the takana, for sure. But if he's dafka trying to do it in a way that is not the takana, then the takana is not going to come into effect. And he's trying to acquire it in this other way called falling, which is an invalid way. So that's why he doesn't get it. Now, what do you think about this? What if he said ekne when he fell on it? Would that help? In other words, is it the Gemara, the way the Gemara is written, it's missing the word Ella. It says, it doesn't say Ella kevan denafal. So it doesn't say Ella kevan denafal. Normally we would say that means that we're not retracting the first opinion that we said he has to say akne, but we are within that opinion, we're defending it. And we're saying he has to say akne, and if you'll tell me he should acquire without saying akne, no, here he has to acquire it with akne. He has to say akne and acquire it because the falling uprooted it. But if he would say akne, it would work.
I think
that's the way my Chavruta and his Rosh Kola wanted to learn it. But I don't agree. I think that it's like there's a missing Ella here. We've gone away from that.
I think it would make more sense with an Ella there, but I think it makes even less sense to argue that this is building on the akne, right? Like I think that's
exactly because obviously he's akne. When he falls, he's saying, "I want to acquire it." He wants to acquire it. Wait a second, but why did we?
And the whole point seems to be that like he is saying akne if you don't do a physical effective act never works for acquiring something, right? And so if the whole point is that if you're trying to do a form of acquisition that is not Arba Amot, that is not successful, your Arba Amot don't automatically kick in, that should be true regardless of what he said, right? But if he's saying acne while falling on it,
what if he fell on it? What if he fell on it and he said akne ba'arba amot sheli?
I think that would actually make things worse, not better. Like the whole point is he's doing this thing. He's like disrespecting rabbinic law. Like they've established a way of acquiring something and he's ignoring it.
Not necessarily. He's saying my falling is not because I'm trying to acquire it through falling. I'm just falling to get there faster, and I'm going to acquire it. Akne. He says akne be arba amot sheli.
I think it's also not so much about disrespect so much as kavana, right? That like when it comes down to it, this arba amot, I think that the rabbis and the stam especially are also grappling with like discomfort around how this is supposed to function, because if it requires sort of no like real intentionality, you can almost imagine like a video game sort of thing of a person just like walking along and like picking up little like jewels that are like next to them as they walk along. And that feels like almost absurd if this just like automatically kicked in. And so on the one hand, we've dismissed the notion that unlike other things, this would require a speech act, but they're like, yeah, you need to be intending. The takana doesn't just mean that automatically
For
if
sure.
you
you
walk
need to be-
around, you
But wait,
like
but it didn't answer my
stop everyone around
question.
you.
Yes or no? If he says akne arba amot sheli and falls on it, will
Then
that work?
seemingly that would be fine because like the whole point is we're saying in the absence of him indicating anything else, he's seeming to show that the nefila is the way that he's trying to
And,
acquire it.
and
If
now
he
let me go
explicitly
one more
said it was
mahala and say that
it would
maybe
be
when
fine.
it said Amar Akne, when it originally proposed that the first time, the lo Amar Akne, it actually was a shorthand way of saying it. What it really meant was the lo Amar Akne be arba amot sheli. And that was the proposal. And I'll tell you why that actually makes sense. I'm trying to defend now the Rosh Kolol of my Chavruta. Why does that make sense? Because obviously when he fell on it, he was trying to acquire it. Adding the words akne is irrelevant if he was trying to acquire it. Everybody knows he was trying to acquire it. So therefore the Gemara must have been suggesting akne ba'arba amot sheli. I want to, and then on that we say, but he doesn't need to say it. And then on that we answer, no, he does, because here it wasn't apparent that he was trying to do that. And then it actually fits nicely without the ella. And I think that's actually, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I think that's, if we all agree anyway at the end of the day that he'll acquire it if he would say akne be, I'm just trying to read it a little bit better maybe. In other words, again, what I'm saying is the original proposal was that he would say akne be arba amot sheli. And on that we said, but if it's a takana de rabbanan, he doesn't have to say that. And on that we said, no, he does have to say it because he fell on it and we thought he wasn't trying to do it with the arba amot sheli. I have to go back and tell my chavruta that I just figured out why he's right. He didn't come up with this explanation that I just did, but I just figured that out now. Okay. All right. I think that's actually now I'm in that direction, but it's not so important. So let's go on. Okay. So wait a second. So how are we defending the statement of Rabbi Reish Lakish? Reish Lakish said Arba Amos Kone, and we're saying in Hakanami they Kone. Yes, they Kone, but here he fell, and falling mitigates that because he's trying to acquire in some other way. But if he wouldn't, but maybe, and the way I'm reading it, and maybe, and the way we're all agreeing actually, is if he would say I'm acquiring it not by the nefila but by the armot, then it would have worked. But he didn't say that, and his actions speak louder than words. His actions seem to tell us he doesn't want to acquire by the takana, and therefore the takana doesn't help him. So therefore, it's not a kasha. So, sorry, Abaye. Abaye could not disprove it, right? Agreed? We're at the point now that Abaye, oh, not Abaye, Rev Chia Bar Yosef, but Abaye brought it. So we're back to our statement of Rabbi of Reish Lakish being totally acceptable. Here, so Aaron, maybe you want to read the next Rav Papa.
Rav Papa Amar, Ki takinu le Rabbanan arba amot, ba'alma. Besadeh de Baal Habayit lo takinu le Rabbanan. So Rav Papa said, when the rabbis made this stipulation, they were talking about arba amot in a sort of general setting. They were not talking about the sadeh of a Baal Habayit. That wasn't what the takana was about.
And what is our case? Our case is Peah. Whose sadeh is it?
It's a particular Baal Habayit.
Exactly. It's a particular Baal Habayit, and I am in his field. And in such a case, my Arba Amos don't work.
Be'afal gav de zachale rachmana begava, ki zachale rachmana lahaluche ba ulaminka peah. So even though the Torah allows him to acquire it or merits him with it, when the Torah does so, it's doing so in the context of walking by and gathering peah, meaning it's not making this.
In other words, he has a certain acquisition, in the land because he can go into it, and the guy can't tell him get out.
Right. Lemahave, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Lemahave chatziro lo zachal erech mana. It's not, the Torah does not, by virtue of Peah, give him the ability to acquire some portion of this person's field. That's not how Peah works.
But even temporarily. In other words, this temporary, in other words, Rav Papa seems to say that like in a Reshut Rabim, right? Anything that's not a Bala Bayit. So let's say Reshut Rabim, you don't own a Reshut Rabim permanently, but when you're standing there, you have a fictional owning of that 4 amos. It's like, if you go to a park and you sit down at a park bench, at a park table, and start having your Suda Shlishi, like they do in my neighborhood, and everybody, the whole family is there. Like I can't like walk over to their table and say, and like sit down at their table, and they say, well, the guy said, I sit down there, they're all crowded around the table, and I just sit down in the middle of their thing. They said, what are you doing here? We're eating here. Why are you sitting in our table? And I say, it's not your table. It's the park it's a city table. I can say I have just as much right to sit here as you do. So who's right? Ultimately, I'm wrong because I'm sort of extending the idea. There is the city sort of acquires to them on a temporary basis that table because they're sitting there. You get your Arba Amos. I can't squeeze up next to somebody and say, well, I have a right to sit here also, because once they've taken it, it's taken. It doesn't mean it's theirs. They can't sleep there. They can't put a tent there. They can't live there. In Eilat, people were putting tents along the beach and leaving them all summer long or all winter long, whatever. They're leaving them for 6 months out of the year. Eventually, after many years, the city cleared them all away. You have a temporary right to it if it's Reshut Rabim. You might have thought that you have a temporary right because I can come into the Reshut Rabim of the Yachid. I can go into I can go to Bala Sadeh's field and be there and start working, and he can't kick me out.
Well,
so maybe
no,
I can also
specifically the aniyim.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking, not just a random person. They're distinguishing the aniyim from I can't go into a random Balabayit's field and start.
You could mafkir your nechassim. You could mafkir all of your nechassim and then go in. It's shaykh to everybody if they want to become an ani. Yeah, but whatever the definition of an ani is, and whoever can go in. But the point is, the Torah. You might have thought that the Torah, by giving him that, gives him the right to also the takana of the Rabbanan would work there because he has the right to be there. Say no, just to go there. It's like another story. Sorry, I have a lot of stories. My brother was in Scotland, and he said he was very surprised by this. There's something called the right to wander, or something like that. They have a right to wander, which means that I can go into somebody's field and just start walking through it. I mean, I can't, trample his produce, but I can take if my field is on the other side and I want to cut through his field, I'm allowed. There has to be a path. He has to put a path there. Yeah, we're allowed to also, but I'm just saying that it's and nowadays also, by the way, I'll just throw out there just a little tidbit, which is that I think that Reshut Rabim is what in England they call the commons. There used to be, they closed, they're no more, but they used to have such a thing as the commons, which means a huge, tract of land where anybody has the right to, bring his sheep there to graze. But it's not owned by any. In other words, I can't build a house there. I can't build a shed there. It's land that is commonly owned by everybody, but by nobody. Nobody can actually use it. But it's different from Hefker land. It's not like what in the midbar, what we would call midbar, which is unowned land. It's commonly owned. That's the Reshut, but it's a little bit different. The Gemara seems to understand it a little bit in a more city-like way. Like there's a lot of people there pushing and shoving, but I'm not sure if that's the only way to understand. Anyway, just giving a little thing there. Okay, back to our subject. So, what is Rav Papa? What is the function of Rav Papa? What is the function of his statement? What is he trying to do? What is he trying to explain? Joel.
Well, is it?
Oh, no, or Jacob, go for it.
Well, I was understanding as him presenting another way to resolve the
Okay, perfect. Yes, to
Contradiction.
resolve the statement of Reish Lakish with the Mishnah and Peah. And to say, well, what was our first explanation? Our first explanation, well, I want to get this very clear. Our first explanation was that he fell on it and therefore he wasn't trying to use it, but Ein Hachanami, Arba Amos does work in a field of the owner of the Balabayit, right? It would work if he would have not fallen, but he fell. Rav Papa says, no, it doesn't work. So I'm just saying there's a machloket between Rav Papa and the Stama of the Gemara. The Stama of the Gemara thinks that Reish Lakish works, that the Reish Lakish din works in the field. And Papa says, no, it doesn't work. It's important to understand that. So I'm just showing you that there's a machloket here. Okay. So now let's go on to so Aaron, read the next. Now we're in the second half. Rava. So Rava also tries to bring an attack on Reish Lakish, and he's going to bring the attack from our Mishnah. And that's why the editor put this whole section here. Because this attack on Reish Lakish mentions our Mishnah. But we're not essentially commenting on our Mishnah, we're essentially commenting on the statement of Reish Lakish.
Amar Rava, Moti Rav Yaakov Bar Idi Nezikin. Ra'at Metzia v'nafal leha, uva achar v'chzikba, zeh shechzikba zachaba. V'yamart she'arba amot shel adam konot lo b'chol makom, nikdu le'arba amot dideh.
But first of all, what does Nezikin mean here?
It means that this is really extra, not really a commentary on our Mishnah, because it's saying the challenge to this thing is from Nezikin, i.e. from our Mishnah.
Right, exactly. From Nezikin, in other words, back in the day when Baba Batra and Baba Kama and Baba Metzia were all called Nezikin. Right, right? One sort of like one Masechta called Nezikin. Or whatever you want to say. The Seder Nezikin of the Mishnayos.
The Rashash says it makes more sense. Like Rashi says the Seder, but the Rashash says that it's the Masechet, because otherwise it's weird that Abaye cited the Masechet and Rava cited the Seder.
Well, actually, right, exactly. That's what I was, yeah. So that's what I was thinking too. Okay, so that's right. I think the correct is that Nezikin is the whole thing. Of course, the machloket, whether it's Nezikin is considered we saw it Tosfos like that, whether it's a machloket, whether Nezikin was originally 1 or 3, but whatever. Okay, so and then he says, so what is it? What is his? So now he brings our Mishnah, right? You saw the Metzia and you fell on it. Zeshech zikba zachaba, and not the one who fell. And now he asks his kasha. Imras. So read that again.
V'amart arba amot shel adam konot lo b'chol makom, niknu le'arba amot dideh. Hacha b'mayaskinan de lo amar akne. V'yitekun rabbanan ki lo amar mahave. Kivan denafal alei gale date de b'nafle nichale de nikne b'arba amot lo nichale de nikne.
So it's the exact same mahalach. It's the exact same mahalach as we just went through. Really no need to go through it, but he basically says the same thing, that he fell on it, and that's why, and falling uproots the takana, and then we say, no, he could have, maybe if he would have said, well, whatever. And if he wouldn't have fallen, it would have worked. It would have worked. It would have worked if he wouldn't have fallen. Okay, now Rav Sheshet.
Rav Sheshet Amar, Bechita kina Rabbanan besimta, velo dach ke rabim. V'shir rabim dekadach ke rabim lo tekina Rabbanan.
Explain.
In some ways, a similar point to Rav Papa's. The sages made this about a particular place. In this case, it's about a back alley where there aren't that many people, but they didn't make that sort of takana about Reshut HaRabim. In some ways, I guess that's the opposite. Whereas before it only works in Reshut HaRabim, here it only works.
Right. You could almost say that it's a machloket, because Rav Papa said it works in Reshut HaRabim, but he didn't. But if you think about it, really what Papa was trying to say is, It didn't work in a private reshut. And any other place it would work. He's not coming to talk about, he's not coming dafka to say that all other reshuyot, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Fine, let's leave it like you said, it's a machloket. Seems like it's a machloket. Seems like Rav Papa is saying it works in Reshus Rabim, and Rav Sheshi says no, it only works in a simta. And then because what's our case? He couldn't have said it only works, it doesn't work. Rav Sheshi couldn't have said it doesn't work in a private area, and this is talking about a private area, because the Metzia, the stam understanding of a Metzia is that you're in a public area and you found a Metzia in a public area. So he couldn't say where it was not. The normal case is that it is in a public area. So he's saying that why didn't it work in a public area? Because the takana was only in a quiet corner. What's the point? Why is it only in a quiet corner? Look at Rashi. Ki tikun le Rabbanan ba'alma.
Ki tikun le Rabbanan ba'alma. Kagun basimta shirashut lechol adam. O bereshut harabim. O betzidei reshut harabim.
Wait a second. This is, I think this is on the first. This is on Rav Papa.
Lo tikun le Rabbanan, right.
So we got to go to the second one, right? Exactly. Lo tikun le Rabbanan.
Right. Everybody's arba amot are overlapping.
And then what? And then people would.
It just doesn't make sense. You can't say you
No,
can't.
but what was the whole point of the takana?
To not fight.
To not fight. And if their reshuyot, like you said, are overlapping, then they're going to still fight. It doesn't accomplish anything. There's no point in the takana applying in a place where everybody's overlapping. But in a quiet alley, then it's clear that it's mine. That's a very important point. That's a principle in takana. Is like you have to understand what the goal of the takana is, and then you can limit its application if you know what the point of the takana was. And if we know that the point was they shouldn't fight, then it wouldn't help. What was that? But notice the Rashi, the first Rashi started to read. It says besimta shehu reshut lekol adam, over reshut harabim, over tzidei reshut harabim, vehi hefker lerabim limshoch letocho. So he's explaining what is a simta. A simta is a place where people go off to the side when they need to, let's say, rearrange the load on their donkey or something. But clearly Rashi is saying that Rav Papa holds in everywhere. Everywhere it works. Reshus Rabim. In other words, the takana applies in Reshus Rabim and in the simtaot. But Rav Sheshi says it doesn't apply in Reshus Rabim. It applies only in simtaot. So we have a three-way machloket, right? The stama holds everywhere. Rav Papa says everywhere that's not a private area, and Rav Sheshi says no, not even that. Only places that are simtaot does it work. Agreed?
There's one other way of reading Rav Papa's statement, like in the Hagra, which I found helpful, which it says Kita kinule Rabbanan arba amot, and he has besadeh alma, so just in a public field, and then so you read that Kita kinule Rabbanan arba amot besadeh alma, the balabai lo tekinule Rabbanan. In the field of in a privately owned field, there's no takana. So, but that would be
no. First of all, wait a second. This gra that you're talking about, he's just saying add into the word ki tiknu le rabbanan arba amot. Where Papa says it's besadeh ba'alma in a field in general.
It's not the Gra's edition. Like the Rif had that.
Oh right, sorry. The Gra points out that it's the Rifs, yeah. But my point is, I'm only speaking up because you were asking about Rav Papa and Rav Sheshet. There's a way of Rav Papa that the takana only works in public fields, and you wouldn't necessarily extrapolate and apply that to a busy Rishut.
In other words, then I hear what you're saying. Then it wouldn't be Reshut Rabim; it would definitely be
a public field. It would still it would be public, but it wouldn't be busy.
Uh-huh. Okay. And that's kind of like what, like a sadeba. So you're saying it's like like what I was saying, what the difference, what a Reshut Rabim maybe used to also be like a commons, like that would be a public field, a field for the public to use for grazing. Interesting. So then it wouldn't necessarily be a machloket. Good. I accept that. Joel.
No, I mean, I think this is interesting. Peah and Ezekiel, right? Peah is not in a city, right? And we're understanding Peah to be in fields, and we're understanding Ezekiel to, although Ezekiel can happen in fields too, but really we're thinking about Ezekiel in terms of like a city, and there's Reshut Rabim of cities, and there's Reshut Rabim of fields, and they mean one is more like the Reshut Rabim we think of for Shabbos, the city one, right? There's lots of people, and the other is like Carmelite almost is probably a better definition.
Exactly.
There's
Yeah,
like
okay.
one of the commenters, I think maybe the Beta Levi, basically explains it as like a mar chada velo plige, as in basically like Rav Papa is resolving that situation and Rav Sheshet is resolving his.
Yes,
so for
I
Rav
agree.
Papa, the
I
distinction
agree.
is fields, and for Rav Sheshet, it's like
Yes,
cities.
I agree. I was going in that direction, but I was first putting it as a strict machloket, and then we could say it's not a strict machloket. And you're right, we could say that Rav Papa wasn't meaning to talk about that. He was just trying to explain why in a field why Peah didn't work, because it's an owned field, and he says everything else is permitted, but he didn't really necessarily mean everything else. He just meant sadot ba'alma, like the grass, like the Rif brings, or he just meant other places, and he's not being too specific. And Rav Sheshet is saying, well, only in a simta. So they're not necessarily machloket. Maybe Rav Papa would say, "Ein achanami." I agree with you, Rav Sheshet. He didn't mean to say that a busy thoroughfare you have the 4 amos. Maybe he agrees with Rav Sheshet. Okay, back to Rav Sheshet. Lo tiknu Rabban. Vaha b'kol makom ka'amar.
B'chol makom ke'amar. But it says everywhere. The Reish Lakish says everywhere.
Now,
Kol
Reish
makom.
Lakish specifically says Arba Amos Koneh b'kol makom. What are you trying to make these ukimtas? Stick with who? Stick with the stama of the Gemara, which said it does work everywhere, and the only reason it didn't work because he fell and falling mevatels the kavana. So on that, the answer no. Rav Sheshet and Rav Papa are correct.
Kol makom tu yetzidei Reshut Rabim.
Exactly. It's not just simtaot; it's also the edges of the Reshut Rabim. Good. Okay. That's the whole Gemara that we wanted to see. Let's look at the Rambam. Now, wait, I want to review. Right. First of all, we're in the Rambam. I want to go to the parak. Thank you, Josie. I sent out the parak. I think I wrote Yud Zayin and autocorrect changed it to Tet Zayin. But I don't know. I thought I wrote Yud Zayin. Gezela, right? Is it Gezela Vaveda, Yud Zayin, Hamotze Shtar? No, that's not it. That's Shmonas, right? Wait a second. Yeah. Kol Metzia Shamarnu. So, here, maybe Sarah, you want to read?
Sure. Kol metzia she'amarnu ba shehi shel mitzua eino zoche ba ad she'yigia liyado o l'reshuto. Aval im ra'at ha'metzia
Shel Motza'ah, the one who finds it.
finds it. Aval im ra'at ha'metzia afilu nafal alea uva'acher v'zik ba harei she'zik ba zacha ba. So
Okay, translate.
codified our Mishnah, right? Basically. Right. So all of these mitziot that we say that the one who finds them gets them, only acquires them if they are holding them in their they come to acquire them at the moment that they are holding them in their hand, or they are in their reshut.
Right. This is right. They're a shoot, like in their house or in their chatzer, if it's a chatzer mishtameret.
Yeah. But if you if someone sees a mitzia, or even if they fall on it, and then someone else comes and takes it, the person who came and took it, gets it.
Right. So wait a second. This is our Mishnah, but why? What is? did he bring any? What
Well,
about
he's-
Arba'amot?
He's stuck in Rishut, right? So that maybe suggests that Arba Amot, under some particular circumstances, might work, but it doesn't.
Right.
He's not directly saying that.
In other words, you could read this if you read this and then didn't read anymore, you would be wondering, well, is he like of which of the three opinions that we just got through saying is he like? Does it acquire? Is he to what place is he talking about? Well, he's probably talking about Reshut Rabim because that's the normal place where you're
Right. Well, he doesn't specify. I think the fact that if you just want to read this on its own, right, before we complicate things, but like, he doesn't specify anything else, so it seems like it would be Reshut Rabim.
right. Okay, what is the next halacha that I told you to look at?
Chet.
Chet. Okay, so read Chet.
Okay. Chatzero shel adam konelo shalom midato. Ve'im nafal ba'metzia harehi shel bal hachatzer. V'mei dvarim amorim b'chatzer hamishtameret. Aval sadeh o gina v'chayotze bahen. Im haya omed b'tzad sadehu v'amar zaktali sadi zakaba. Ve'im ein omed sham o shehi O shehaya omed v'lo amar zaktali sadi kol hakodeim zaka.
Right. So he has to, if it's a field that's not mishtameret, he's got to be standing
He's
there.
gotta be there
and
and he's gotta
also say, "I'm acquiring my field's acquiring it." So he has to know about it.
He has
He
to know
can't,
about
like,
it, and he
make-
has to say,
You can't like make a statement at the beginning of January 1st. Anything that falls into my field, even though it's not a field that's mishtameret, I'm zacheba. It's not going to work. He has to be there at the time and see it and say it. Can't make a general
and he has
statement.
to say that it's not only like he has to say not only that I acquired it, but I'm acquiring it through my field, like where he has to specify the means of acquisition.
Mhm. Okay, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Wait.
V'chein arba amot shel adam shehu omed betzido harei eino
B'tzidan.
harei elu konim lo. V'im higia metzia letoch arba amot shelo zakaba.
Oh, so too, Arba Amot, presumably in a Reshut Rabim.
Seems like it.
Right, although he didn't say yet.
He didn't say.
Go on. What's the next one I gave?
Tet.
Tet. Okay, so read that.
Hachamim tiknu davar zeh kedei shelo yirbu hamotzin zeh zeh.
Look,
The man-
Yinatsu. Yinatsu. Is that what you said?
No, but that's not what it says in whatever you copied into the source sheet.
Oh,
Your-
sorry.
Your
I'm reading.
is the Rambam.
I'm reading in the
That's
Frankel now,
very
and he's changes it to Yinatsu, which means to fight.
Okay. Okay, that makes more sense in a certain way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Yarivu is also fighting.
Yeah. Exactly. It doesn't
Yeah,
make
it just
sense. It's
parallels
a
the
different usage.
Lashon of the Gemara more closely, which seems like more Ramban like.
Okay, good. Right. So they shouldn't. Chachamim tiknu devar zeh, so that people shouldn't fight. All right, but made devar mamurim. Oh, now we're getting to some limitations.
Okay. May remember besim ta'obet sidei reshut harabim she'en harabim dochakim bahen obesadeh she'en lo ba'alim.
Oh, so who is he paskening like?
And now he's paskening like who said the thing about the simta? Rav Sheshet.
And what's the last four words there?
Besimta obershut harabim she'en harabim dochakim ba obesadeh she'en lo ba'alim aval ha'omed bershut harabim
Wait. Oh, b'sadeh she'ein lo ba'alim.
ba'alim. Right.
Who's that? Who said that? In other words, as opposed to a sadeh that has ba'alim. Doesn't work in a sadeh that has ba'alim. Well, that's what he's about to say. Aval haomed b'reshus harabim o b'toch sadeh chavero, a sadeh that has ba'alim, ein aram koneh lo, ve'eino koneh sham ad shetegia metzia liyado. Until he gets to his hand, he doesn't acquire. So who is he paskening like also?
Is it the other way around? I've gotten these mixed up in my head now.
No, you're not mixed up. You said it right.
No, originally he's passing like Rav Sheshet, right?
And who's the first opinion that said Remember when in the we differentiated by Peah and we said by Peah.
Right. So then it's also the first of the pay opinions, which is Oh no, that doesn't.
It's on the top of the of Ahmed Bet.
Right, of Rav Papa.
Right, Rav Papa. He's also paskening Rav Papa. He's paskening Rav Papa and Rav Sheshet, which fits to the idea that they are not arguing. Right? We can say, well, it's not really a machloket. Rambam understands it's not a machloket. Rav Papa was just sort of saying one part of the din and the other part where Rav Sheshet said. But they didn't really mean to. Who is he not paskening like?
Rava.
No.
Oh,
No. I mean, you could. Rava didn't really give an opinion, but
yeah.
Stam.
the stam exactly.
Rejects both of them.
Yeah. Okay. You could say Rava. You could say Rava and I mean, Rav Chia bar. Who is it? Rav Yosef bar Chia or
Rav
Chia bar-
Yosef. Rav Yosef.
But
Yeah,
I
Rav
don't
Yosef.
Yosef.
He's not
I don't
paskening
think
like
they're
what
the
I
ones
call
giving the terusim though.
exactly. It's a stam. He's not paskening like the stam. Right. You're right. Exactly. Those people were the brings who brought kashas. Lexi, you're right. He's not paskening like the stam. He's not paskening like the stam. Any thoughts on why the stam was perfectly valid? The stam had a perfectly good explanation. He said, because he fell. Gali daite. That didn't work. He did mention the stam in the first halacha. He said efilu nafal, which, well, we'll see. But it's a second. Okay, so why wouldn't he paskin like the stam? Yeah, no.
Two reasons. Well, one is just I think if it's like named a moraim against the.
Oh, exactly. I think that's an excellent point. You have a state. Yeah, but go further. Develop that idea more.
Oh, well, I don't have more to say about that, but I have another reason.
Okay, another reason. Yeah, go.
Which is by the end of the sugya, the stam doesn't even paskin like the stam. Meaning by the end of the sugya, the stam says, "V'ha b'chol makom, v'cha b'chol makom gamar, kol makom tu tzidei reshut harabim." Meaning by the end of the
Yeah, but that
sugya,
was the stam defending Rav Sheshet.
I know, but it's just anyway. It just shows by the end of the sugya that the stam is operating in the paradigm that the takana only works in some places and not others. So why arbitrarily go?
Yeah, I don't buy that. I think that's just. I don't buy it. I think that's just defending Rav Sheshet. First, the stam was defending Rav Reish Lakish.
Okay, then I retract my second reason. Let's just stick.
Okay, you could try, I accept that. I accept your retraction. So wait a second. So there's the stam was defending Reish Lakish, and then we got two different explanations that it's not really Makom Makom, and that's Rav Papa and that's Rav Sheshet. So in a sense, you could almost say we're not paskening like Reish Lakish. You could almost say we're paskening like these other rabbis. And the stam you said because we don't pass like the stam because it's not named. Okay. Joel, what do you got?
I think he's passing like both. I like.
What do you mean both? There's three.
It with the stam and then in one corner in the Rav Papa Rav.
Okay.
How to understand our Mishnah, he's paskening like the stam. In case of how to understand the limits of Reish Lakish, he's paskening like Rav Sheshet and Rav Papa. In other words, he thinks that to answer what's going on in our Mishnah is because you dived on it, therefore Gali Date, that you didn't want the Takana of the Rabbanan. Doesn't matter, and therefore he doesn't limit the Mishnah to any particular makom. Right? The Mishnah can be any makom, like the one in Nizikim. Let's not worry about Peah for the moment. But if in terms of Reish Lakish, it's obvious, like as you said, Reish Lakish wasn't talking about, for instance, a place where you're in somebody else's field or a place where there's a bunch of people packed together in a stadium, because then it destroys the entire point of the takana in the first place.
Say that again. Say the last part again. I was not
without Rav Papa or Rav Sheshet, you destroy the point of the takana in the first place. If you really think it's bechol makom, then Reish Lakish makes no sense because people are going to fight if their dalamot overlap or if they're in somebody else's field, right?
Well, not necessarily. I could argue that the first one there will get it. There's always, the fact that I didn't bend down. It's true, but I was there before you.
So All right, fair. But still, I think that's what he's doing. I think he's saying that how do you understand the Mishnah? Understand the Mishnah per the Stam. How do you understand Rish Lakish? Understand him per Rav Papa and Rav Sheshet. And therefore the Mishnah is no longer limited.
So he's just making it's a goulash. He's taking everybody. Everybody, you're right and you're right, but they can't both be right. You're right too. Because really they're different explanations. Okay, Lexi, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Joel in the sense that like it does seem that he's like taking part of the Stam's insight, which is that like if you're doing Nefila, like wherever we say Arba Amot works, nonetheless, if you indicate that you're not trying to acquire with Arba Amot, then it doesn't.
Well, there's a Mishnah. You can't get away from the Mishnah.
Correct. As in again, we're trying to negotiate that with our Arba Amot thing. So he's building off of the Stam's fetish there, or an explanation of our Mishnah, while seemingly rejecting the implication of the Stam only saying that, which is that otherwise Arba Amot works everywhere. And I think that like when it comes down to it, often I feel like I mean I have to like go back through some more sugyas, but I do think we often will poskin like the Stam against a Moraim. I mean, I think it depends on a lot of things in the structure of the sugya. I think sometimes we actually often default to the Stam over a Moraim because the Stam is considered to be later and more authoritative.
I mean, I'm not going to do a Mechkar of the whole Talmud right now, but wait, go back to the Mishnah. Go back to the Mishnah. Go back to the first halakha in the Rambam. He doesn't say anything about the Stam. I don't see any reference to the Stam in the first halakha.
We're talking about the Nefila.
But he just says, I'm just looking at it again. Afilu nafal lo aleha. It doesn't say anything gale daite. He doesn't say that you revealed his intention not to use the takana. He doesn't say what the Stam says. He just quotes the Mishnah.
Again,
you can't get away from the Mishnah, so he quotes the Mishnah.
You're clearly on the side of the Kesef Mishnah about the Nefila.
I'm just looking at the Rambam.
I think that we can get into the reasons.
We're going to after the break. We're going to look at the commentaries.
What I was going to say,
but I'm just saying
before you get into that, what I was going to say is that I think part of why we do this, building off of what Joel mentioned, is that ultimately the Stam works better with the language of the Gemara, but like Rav Sheshet and Rav Papas, especially Rav Sheshet, just like feel like incredibly intuitive limits. Right? That like the Stam obviously works better with the language of B'chol Makom. Like saying B'chol Makom la'tuye tzidei reshut harabim is like an incredibly dachuk explanation of that wording. And nonetheless, as Joel is saying, I do think that it like essentially invalidates the very basis of the takana to say that it would be functional in like incredibly crowded places where 1 million people's Arba Amot are like overlapping one another. And so I think ultimately the poskim like find it a very compelling limitation, like one that just like makes sense if it's going to be at all actionable.
Okay, thank you. Good. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in like 5 minutes, and we'll see what the commentaries say. And let me pause. Okay, so let's before we go into any perushim, let's see the rest of the Rambam. So look in Hilchot Zechia Matana, chapter 4. We'll start with actually, I guess Chet and Tet. I brought Chet just because Tet started with V'mei Devar Mamurim, so you kind of have to have like what were we talking about beforehand. So here, Max, you want to read?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm in the right place.
It's on the source sheet that I sent, but if you don't have the source sheet, then it's
okay.
Then it's Hilchot Zechia Umatana.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Chapter 4.
I see it right here. Okay. Zachin lakatana filu ben yom echad, legadol ben befanav uben shelo befanav, v'chatzero shel adam konelo shelo midato af al pi she'eno omed sham. This
is talking about a chatzer mishtameret, that your chatzer can acquire. Yes. Okay, fine. Now go on.
Bamed dvarim amurim b'chatzer hamishtameret, as you said. Aval b'chatzer she'ena mishtameret kagon sadehu v'churbato ad sheyeh omed b'tzida v'yomar zachta li sadi. וכן 400 של אדם שהוא עומד בצידן קונים לו בסמטה או בצידי רשות הרבים או בחצר שאין לה בעלים.
Oh, so that's Rav Sheshet and Rav Papa. Aval,
אבל ברשות הרבים או בשדה חברו, אינו זוכה עד שיגיע מתנה לידו.
right, in Rashut Rabim, it has to get into your hand. Okay.
And do you want me to do it?
Skip to the next. Skip to the next halacha on my sheet, which is Matanat Aniyim, chapter 2, halacha Yudchet.
Aniyim. Okay. Sorry. I'm just looking for your source sheet.
I mean, what we saw up till now is pretty much a repeat of everything of what we said before. It just kind of repeats it, but it's a little bit clearer. I like the language sort of led me to certain conclusions because he says like, you don't acquire it. He spells it out. You do acquire it in the Simta, but you don't acquire it in Shuta Rabim until it comes into your hand. That's what we read.
Yes.
And now we're in Halacha Yudchet.
Okay, I have it.
Go ahead.
Ani shnatam miktzat ha'pe'ah v'zarak al ha'sha'ar, o shenafal aleha, o shepiresh talito aleha, konsino to uma'avirino to mimena, ve'afilu ma shenata lokhin oto miado v'inaten la'ani acher, v'chen beleket v'chen be'omer ha'shichacha. So yeah,
go ahead.
I just think it's interesting that he uses the word konsin.
Yeah. Well, umavirino to mimenu, he understands even ein lo klum, like the Mishnah said, ein lo klum. So he understands it that he even loses that which he had already acquired. He had acquired stuff, but he loses that. Afilu mashanatal, even what he already acquired, lochimoto miyado. It's almost like you're so why are we finding him? Why are we finding him? We're making a fine on him for doing something wrong, apparently. Right? He did something wrong. He wasn't supposed to try to put his towels on all those chairs at the pool. He's not allowed to do that. So he loses even the pay that he had already harvested, perhaps. Okay.
Right. I mean, it's a way of reading the sugya to suggest that the opinion that he's revealed his intention to do it another way is somehow like insouciant or like obnoxious or contrary to what everyone should know to be the way.
No, wait a second. You brought up like I'm cutting you off, but you're adding something that's not there. The Rambam does not say does not mention anything about this whole idea of the ukimtas, of the ukimtas, not of the ukimtas, of the explanation that falling is a way of kind of rejecting the Arba Amot that was so nice, that could have worked for him, but won't work for him.
Mm-hmm.
That is rejected because he doesn't need that opinion. Why doesn't he need that opinion? How is he going to explain the Mishnah? Like Rav Sheshet and Rav Papa. How did they explain it?
Just
what
that
was Rav Sheshet and Rav Papa's explanation of the Mishnah?
That it doesn't apply there.
Where? Because
it's either in a sadeh where a person is doing payah, or it's not in a sideh harishut harabim, or it's in one of the inappropriate places.
Exactly. It's because the Mishnah is talking. Well, the Mishnah is talking about a Metzia. It's probably not talking about payah. So it's Rav Sheshet's opinion. In other words, Rav Sheshet was the one to try to explain the Mishnah, and he said, because the Arba Amos of Reish Lakish only works in Simtaot, and therefore, what is the Mishnah talking about? Not a Simta. What is the Mishnah talking about? What's not a Simta?
In Rishon Harabim.
Exactly. Now Rambam never mentions anywhere this idea that your mind, that you're rejecting the 4 amos because of your behavior. He goes strictly with Rav Sheshet's explanation. So let's look at the commentaries.
Out of curiosity, where does he get the kanasin from? I didn't chase down. I have to admit, not chasing down the Mefarshim on this particular.
Well, just I also didn't look, but I just because it says lo klum, ain't lo klum. The Mishnah says it's in the Tosefta, says Joel. It's in the Tosefta. But I can also learn from the Mishnah because the Mishnah says ain't lo klum. What does it mean ain't lo klum? Really ain't lo klum? Nothing. I mean, I guess we don't take the shirt off his back, but ain't lo klum of the paya. All right, so let's go back to Hilchos Gezei Levaveda Perech Yud Zayin, and what I mentioned to look at just today in the email earlier. Now, let's go back to the first halacha. The halacha is Kol Metzia Sha'amarnu Ba Shehi Shel Motza'ah Eino Zacha Ba Ad Shetagia Liado Ola Reshuto. Now, how do we understand that? I'm just going back to read it again. It has to come into his hand. But we said Arba Amos. Well, that was in certain circumstances. But this is in general, in the Rishus Rabim. Aval Imra, Metzia, Filu Nafal, Leha, Uba, Acher, Vechzik Ba, Zeshechzik Ba, Zachaba. Okay. Look at the Magid Mishnah. So, Jessica, you want to read the Magid Mishnah?
Yeah, though I didn't have a chance to look at it between your email and the class. So
fine, it's all right. It's not too bad. We'll anything. We'll as you know, I'll jump at any slight mistake. Okay, go ahead.
אמרנו בה שהיא של מוצאה וכולי, אבל אמרה וכולי. משנה מפרשת פרק 2 אחוזים. ועבדינן עלה שתי עקימתות דקמינה עמי אין הבאמות של אדם קנות לה, ופריק כיוון דנפל כדי הדתה דבנפילה נכלה, דליקנה באמות לא נכלה. דליקנה רב אשי אמר, לא נכלה דליקנה. רב אשי אמר, כי תקינו רבנן בסמטה, כלומר משנתנו במקום שאין
Wait, so wait, he calls it Rav Ashi. By us, it's Rav Sheshet, right?
Yeah.
So he calls it Rav Ashi. So he said there's two kimtas, which by that he means there's two explanations. The first explanation, which is what we call the stama, which is that he gali daite.
Or two resolutions, right? Like two ways of resolving the Mishnah and Reish Lakish's statements.
Yeah, exactly. Two resolutions of the Mishnah. The first one was the stama. This is all in the second part of the Gemara that we read.
Yep.
Stama of the second part, and then the Rav Sheshet of the second part, which he calls Rav Ashi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what did Rav Ashi say? Read that again. I'm a Rav Ashi. Ki tiknu.
In the Magid Mishnah, you mean?
No. Just keep reading in the Magid Mishnah.
כי תקינו רבנן בסמטה, כלומר משנתנו במקום שאין אבא אמות כגון ברשת הרבים. This is just the thing we saw.
כלומר, משנתנו במקום שאין 4 אמות כגון רשות הרבים. Our Mishnah is in a case where it is like Max said, in the Rishus Rabim, and therefore there's no Arba Amos. Okay.
Yeah.
The Rabbeinu Zal.
רבנו ז"ל סתם נראה שהוא סומך על הקמצא הראשונה. משמע שאף במקום שהבאמות קנות כשנפל לא קנה דהווה הקמצא דגמרא אף על פי שדין הקמצא השניים אמת.
השנייה.
השנייה, sorry. אמת, שאין אבא אמת כנת בכל מקום כמו שיתבאר בפרק זה.
Right. Now, even though the Rambam eventually is going to paskin like the second Ukimta Rav Sheshet or Rav Ashi, however you want to read it, he also is pasking like the first Ukimta, that it says that it doesn't work in Rishus HaRabim. And why does he say, what's his proof that he also paskins like the first one?
In halachas text.
No, not from Halacha Tet. V'Rabbeinu Zal Stam Nireh Shehu Somech Alu Kimta Rishona. Why? The mashma sha'af b'makom shedaled amos konot, that even in those places where are amos konot, which means where a simta kishenafal lokana, when he falls in this simta, doesn't work. Why? How does he make this deal? What's the deal? How does the Maggid Mishnah say that's what the Rambam is saying?
Based on this last sentence in the Rambam, Avali Mar'at Metzia, afilu nafal ba'aleha, uvacher b'hachzik ba, zeshe hachzik ba.
And why can't that be Rishus HaRabim?
Because there's no specifying in the Rambam, and he starts with kol.
Oh, exactly. Because the Rambam doesn't specify. Exactly. The Rambam says a rule, and he doesn't limit it in any way. We don't see that the Rambam says here that nefila works. You know that apparently nefila, in a place where nefila would have worked, it doesn't work here because it's nefila. So even in a simta, it wouldn't work. Nefila wouldn't work. Everywhere nefila doesn't work. Joel.
I want to agree with what you're saying, but I want to read the Rambam a little bit differently to like reify that, because I want to read it as Rabbeinu Zal Satam. Nireh shehu somech okimta harishana. In other words, because the Rambam wrote stop, he didn't give any qualifications for where this is. That's the proof, right?
Yes, exactly. That's what I think. What Jessica was saying.
That's what Jessica was saying. I agree with what you're saying. I think you read it, or when you read it back, you said that Rabbeinu's stam nireh. It's not stam nireh. It's Rabbeinu's.
Oh satam.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. I take your correction. You're right. That is the best way to read it. The Rabbeinu Satam. He was quiet, and therefore, see, because according to Rav Sheshet, I don't care if you fall. If you fall, you acquire. The only reason the Mishnah said that you don't acquire it is because that the Arba Amot don't work, which they should have when you fell, is because it was in a place that it didn't work. But I don't care you fall as much as you want, you'll acquire. And the Rambam seems to say no. The Rambam says no, falling doesn't work, and he says it always. Okay, that's the way the Maggid Mishnah reads it. Now the Kesef Mishnah, in my opinion, is correct. So let's see what the Kesef Mishnah says. Here, Jessica, read the Kesef Mishnah.
Okay. Kometziim v'chulei, v'al Metzia afilu nafal aleh v'chulei. כתב הרב המגיד, משנה מפורשת, פרק 2 וכולי, סתם נראה שהוא סומך על הקמתה הראשונה וכולי.
Okay, so that's just a quotation of the Maggid.
Yeah. אין דברי דין. נראים בכאן, אם כן...
What is hey there?
I thought it was Hu Hadin.
No. Anybody else?
Hu Hamat or something?
Harav HaMagid.
Harav HaMagid, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Ein divrei Rav HaMagid nirin. He says I don't think he's right. They don't appear to me to be correct. The Rav HaMagid. Bekan.
ואם כן, לא חבר לרבנו לכתוב אפילו נפל עליה, ומדכתב לשון אפילו הדבר ברור, דלא תפס כאקמתה כמייתה.
Okay. So all he basically says is, well, but the Rambam said afilu, so it doesn't work. So he's wrong. So now it's your job to figure out why the word afilu proves that the Magid Mishnah is wrong, according to the Kesef Mishnah.
Well, he says even if he fell on it, which implies that falling on it does have some power that just being within 4 amot doesn't.
Exactly, perfect. In other words, afilu you fell on it. Falling on it is not a griyuta. It's not something that makes it worse. It's I don't know what's the opposite of griyuta, malyuta. It's a benefit. It makes it stronger. Afilu you did that because what was the Rambam saying? What do you think about falling? You think falling is more than just seeing. And what's the whole point of the halacha aleph? To say that that seeing doesn't work, but what does work?
Picking up.
Exactly, coming into your hand. You've got to use your articulated fingers. You have to use your hand, and seeing and even falling don't work. So how does he learn the Mishnah? How does the Rambam learn the Mishnah? The Mishnah is saying even if he fell on it, it doesn't work because he didn't come into his hand. And where is the Mishnah talking about? Like Rav Sheshit says in Rishus HaRabbi. And there's no remez to the Ukimta Rishona. He's not paskening like that Ukimta at all, says the base. Now look at the Melech, Mishnah the Melech. So, I mean, just wait, you understand, wait, before we go on, you understand what the Kesef Mishnah is saying in a Gavaldic thing? He's saying a great thing here. He's saying, you don't know how to read the Rambam. That's what he's saying. When the Rambam says, just because he mentions the words of the Mishnah doesn't mean he's agreeing with this idea of his megale daite, that he doesn't want it. That's not the way the Rambam is saying. He's not saying because he fell on it, he doesn't acquire. He's saying even though he fell on it, he doesn't acquire. It's nothing to do with he reads the falling as a possible benefit, not as a detriment. So clearly, I think the Kesef Mishnah is right. So, but let's look at the Melech the Mishnah.
מה שכתב מרן בכמה מקומות, אין דברי
בכסף משנה.
או בכסף משנה.
Maran, Mechaber, right? In the Kesef Mishnah.
אין דברי הרב המגיד נראים. בכאן, אם כן, לא הווה לרבנו לכתוב אפילו נפל עליה וכולי. דברי הרב תמוהים, דאפילו נפל עליה, דכתב רבנו, הוא ללמדנו דבנפילה על גבי המציע אינו קונה. והיינו דינה דמתניתין דמדסתם ולא חילק בדין סיתמה, מוכרח הוא דפסק אוקימתא כמייתא בדברי מן not sure.
It's not Moreno, however, Yosef Caro.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Moreno, Harav, Yosef Caro, Kasia, Yithyashvu, Divrei Rabbeinu, Tzirichiyah.
All right, so this is a little bit harder.
So he says, the words of the Kesef Mishnah are astonishing because this phrase of even if he fell on it, which the Rambam wrote, are to teach us that falling on the found object do not acquire.
Right, well, that's so far I agree with that. So far we agree with that, right? Falling on it doesn't acquire, even though you guys come into your hand, right? V'hainu dina dematiti. And that's the din of the Mishnah. That's just Mishnah says that. That's you can't get around that. But how is that so far? I don't see what's tamuhim about the Kesef Mishnah.
And he doesn't distinguish between the din in an alley, which is forced that he paskins according to the Akimta. He does think the Akimta stands.
Oh, wait, so that's it. So he says, because he didn't Michalek, he didn't say in a alleyway, like bedin simta, he didn't say that it would work in an alleyway. Muchrachu de pasaku. It must be that he paskins. The truth is, I don't quite understand what his point is. Of course, he didn't distinguish because of simta, because he's gonna do that later, as we saw. He didn't do that in halacha aleph because it was a general case, but he does that in halacha tet. He does distinguish between a simta. So I don't understand what his problem is here. The truth is, anybody help me out? Anybody understand what his problem is? What is he trying to say? He didn't. What does he want him to say? He's saying? Like the Ram, if the Kesef Mishnah was right, then he should have said what? He should have said in a simta. But what? But in a Rishus Rabim Nefila does work? I don't understand. Nefila. Oh, yeah, in a simta, he should have said in a simta, Nefila does work. He should have said in a simta, Nefila does work, because it does work, because it's Arba Amos works in a simta, and if he doesn't paskin that the Nefila is a griuta, but it's a malyuta, then it should work. Then he should have said in a simta, Nefila works. And back in halacha tet, he doesn't say that a Nefila works. Well, he also doesn't say it doesn't work. He also doesn't say it doesn't work. So I just think that he would say, yeah, it does work. The Rambam didn't have to specify that it doesn't work. The whole point of the Mishnah, according to the Rambam, is to say that nefila is not called grabbing, and therefore it doesn't work. But if it's in a simta and now you've got arba amos, so nefila would work. So why didn't he mention that in halacha tet? Because he doesn't need to. Because he never mentioned that the falling is any way bad, except in the peah. But in here, it's not any way bad in the sense that it should not give you the arba amos. So of course it'll work there. There's no the reader will not come to the conclusion that falling in a simta doesn't work, because there's no remez to falling not working. Of course it'll work. So I don't agree with the Mishnah the Melech. I don't think he needed to specify it here, because in Tet he doesn't need to specify it either, because who would think that it shouldn't work unless you read the Gemara? But the Rambam wrote his work so that you don't have to read the Gemara.
I honestly do think it's a fair argument that it's weird for him to state this here if he thinks that in Rishut Harabim it doesn't work at all, and in the Simta Nefila would work. It's weird to mention it then. If there's a simpler way to either just say in Rishut Harabim Arba Amo doesn't work, period, and then in a Simta it works regardless of what you're doing. I think he also is maybe, again, it kind of feels like he's rejecting what Joel and I were saying earlier, which is that you could essentially have your cake and eat it too, and have the Amoraim's Okim to Ot, while still agreeing with the logic of the Stam and his specification about the Nefila, right? He's no, they're mutually exclusive. Either you hold Rav Sheshet and Rav Papa, or one of them, and you think it doesn't work in those spaces, but in the spaces it works no matter what, regardless of whether you've fallen on it or not. Or you hold the Stam and it works everywhere, but not if you've fallen on it, right? There can't be a mix and match of the opinions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's what the Maggid Mishnah tried to say, that that you can put them all together. And but I don't think that you have to say that. I think that you certainly can read the Rambam coherently as saying that nefila doesn't work when you're in a Rishus Rabim, And then when he finally teaches you the din of Arba Amos, so then he doesn't need to mention it because he never said that it wouldn't work. He never said, he doesn't. What about if you crawl near the object? That should also work. What if you skip to the object? Any way you're near the object, it works. And there's no reason to think that falling doesn't work. The falling, what he mentioned earlier, was that yafilu falling, even if you did this good thing called falling, it won't work there. But he never said that. That doesn't imply that that's because it's Rishus Harabim and you didn't, and we didn't yet learn the laws of Arba Amos. Once we learn the laws of Arba Amos, then it would work. But of course, that's only in the places that it works, like a simta. Okay, I think that the Beis Yosef is on the money, and let's look at his earlier work, the Shulchan Aruch, Sif Aleph in Choshen Mishpat, Reish Samachet. So here, Noam didn't read. Okay, no, go for it. This is in my page that I sent out, but if you don't have the page, it's Choshen Mishpat Reish Samach Aleph Halacha Aleph.
Kol Metzia she'amarnu shehi shel motza'a אינו זוכה בה עד שתגיע לידו לרשותו, אבל אם ראה את המציע אפילו נפל עליה, ובאחר והחזיק בה, זה שהחזיק בה זכה בה.
So that's Lashon Rambam. It's a word for word Lashon Rambam, right? There's no difference, no space, no difference between that and the Rambam. By the way, a lot of these Choshen Mishpats in the Rambam, I mean, I did not do a comprehensive study, but whenever I do look, it seems like the Mechaber is just copying the Rambam, pretty much. Anyway, now look at the Haggah. I love this.
ודווקא בראשית הרבים, אבל במקום שארבע אמות קונות, קנה, ולא גרם משום דנפל עליה.
Look at that. Look at the Ramah. You should be jumping for joy when you see this Ramah. He just explained everything that we just said. Look at that Ramah. He just explained everything. He just said, Dafka b'Rishus Harabim. How do you learn the Rambam? Now, he's explaining the Beit Yosef. I mean, he's explaining the Mechaber. But the Mechaber is the Ramah, is the Rambam. It's exactly the Lashon of the Rambam. And what he's saying is, he's now giving you a Perush of the Rambam. And he's saying, Dafka b'Rishus Harabim. That's the Kesef Mishnah's way of learning. Not like the Magid Mishnah or the Mishnah of the Melech. The Rambam is saying, Dafka b'Rishus Harabim. That's why the Fila doesn't work. And then he specifically spells it out about Makom, Shal Arba Amos Konot, but on all the places that Arba Amos works, which is good, what the Rambam says in Al-Khatet, which is in a Simta, so of course it works. Why? The Logara Mishum Denafale. What? There's nothing wrong with it. There's no need to this whole idea of falling indicates some kind of worseness of the that you're rejecting the kinyan of Arba Amos. Strike it from the rule books. Tur Beis Yosef b'Shem Harif Rosh v'Ken Yir l'Data Rambam. Oh, that's the Data Rambam. V'Ran b'Shem Hara. You see what I'm saying? It's a mahalach in the Rambam. We now are seeing how to learn the Rambam. Kesef Mishnah is no slouch. He said a few words. He just said, because it says the word afilu, the Magid is wrong. And now we see why. All right, that's my mahalach. Now what? Now we go back and look at the Tosfos if you want. I mean, the rest of the Shulchan Aruch is, gets into details here, but I'm not.
Wait, we do the next three words in the Ramah.
Okay, yeah, we can read. We can keep on reading. We can keep on reading all the Shulchan Aruch. The truth is, maybe we'll do the Tosfos next week, but because the truth is, yeah. Did people read the Kedushin that I asked you to look at? Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I don't know if I plan to do that, but the whole Kedushin, there's a whole long sugya there, and the Tosfos there is interesting, but yeah, I don't know if we can do it in 18 minutes. Here, Joel, go ahead. Joel, what do you want to read?
Well, I just wanted to do the next three words in the Ramah, the Lo Yesh Cholkin, right? He's like, and not like those people, right? And I've got quoted among that in the end is the Magid Mishnah, Perak Zayin Ladat Rambam, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Not like the Magid Mishnah. And as we're rejecting that perush of the Rambam, says the Ramah, and the Ramah is accepting it. He's not. Okay, actually, you know what? Since we only have 18 minutes, let's continue in the Shulchan Aruch. I also have some things to say about the Shulchan Aruch, so we'll do that, and then we'll do the Tosfos next week, and the Kiddushin. I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure if we have to read the whole. We read. If you all read it, that's great. Then we can just learn the Tosfos, and we don't have to relearn. We don't have to learn together the Kiddushin over there. Okay. So read. So who was reading? Noam, were you reading?
Yeah.
So read Sif Bet.
דלת אמות של אדם שהוא עומד בצידן, הרי אלו קונים לו, ואם הגיעה המציאה לתוך דלת אמות שלו, אז זכה בה. וחכמים תיקנו דבר זה כדי שלא יריבו המוצאים זה עם זה. במה דברים אמורים? בסמטה או בצדעי רשות הרבים, שאין הרבים דוחקים בהם, או בשדה שאין לה בעלים. אבל העומד ברשות הרבים, או בתוך שדה חברו, אין דלת אמות קונות לו ואינו קונה שם עד שתגיע מציאה לידו.
Okay, so that's the Rambam, Rav Sheshin, Rav Papa. Go on.
The Haggah.
Yeah.
ההגה, שניים שבאו כאחד לתוך דלת אמות, או שעומדים שניהם ונפלה המציאה לתוך דלת אמותיהן, קנו שניהן.
Oh, so he says, what about this overlapping Dalet Amos? So they both own it. If they came at the same time. Shabao ke'echad. They both get it and they have to divide it. Fine. Okay, keep going.
סעיף ג' קצרו של אדם קונה לו שלא מידתו, ואם נפל במציאה, הרי היא של בעל החצר. במה דברים אמורים? בחצר המשתמרת.
Right. So a chatzer mishtameret, you don't need dat, as opposed to a field which is not guarded, then you need to know it's there. All right, go on. This is the Ramah, I think. Yeah. Yeah, keep reading. Ve'en chatzero konelo.
Ein chatzero konelo. And now we're back in. Sorry, I'm just reading off the sheet. Now we're back in the Mechaber already, or we're still in the Ramah?
Actually, the way I printed it, I can't know anymore. I'm also looking.
Nachum, in my Shulchan Aruch, the Ein Chatziro Konelo is in parentheses, and the Ramah starts Eila Biodea B'Metzia. So maybe you can read the whole thing together, but it's all the Ramah. It's
all the Ramah. Okay.
Ela Biodea B'Metzia Oda Sikadate. Aval b'davar she'ino ragil lavo ein chatzero konelo afal pi sheba'a metziah lasham uvacher v'natla sham zacha ho'il v'lo yada bal hechatzer b'metziah asher sham kodem shezacha b'hashini.
Right. So he says, when he says ein chatzero konelo, what is he referring to? A chatzer mishtameret?
Yeah, I thought so.
I think so.
Even so, he's not agreeing with the Mechaber,
or he's highly eliminating him, right?
Ela biyodiin, but he says, but the Mechaber koneh shalom midato. He specifically said shalom midato. Now he says biyodiin b'metzia o the asik adaite that he's paid attention. But so he's saying the ukimta he's making on the mechaber is that when it's a normal thing that falls into one's garden, then it does acquire without your knowing. But if it's an unusual thing, then you got to know about it. So you can actually take it from somebody's chatzer because it's still hefker. As long as you took it before the guy who it fell into his yard knew about, unless it's a thing that normally falls in there. You know what? I feel like, I don't know. Actually, I feel like doing the Tosfot. Let's go to the Tosfot. I think we can do it. I think we can do the Tosfot. So let's go back to the Tosfot. And I guess I'll skip the first little Tosfot. Wait, is it? Let me see. No, yeah.
Are you talking about the Tosfot in Bava Metzia or in another Masechet?
Actually, I'm talking about. You know what we have to do? We have to look at the Tosfot in Kiddushin. It's much longer and therefore easier than the Tosfot here in Bava Metzia. So open up Kiddushin, Daf Nun Tet. Let's see. I don't know if we can finish it, but maybe we can. And this is talking about the whole concept of ani me'apech b'charara, which is an interesting topic, actually. What is the definition of ani me'apech b'charara?
It's like a poor person who's in negotiations about a loaf of bread.
Yeah. What is a charara? I always think of a charara is like a burnt piece of bread, but I don't know. Yeah, Joel, what do you say?
Someone pointed out to me that there's another definition of chara, which is like a sheaf of wheat, right? It could be that actually
like
makes
a stack.
it bigger better. So
What'd you say, Jessica?
Or like a stack of grain is another thing that charara can mean.
Which I think is how Rashi gets to the explanation, or whoever it is gets the explanation of like a one looking for work. Like there's someone who explains it as an ani is like trying to get hired for something or trying to do work, and you basically take it.
Right, that's also right. Well, look at Rashi. Look at this. There, look, we're on Daf Nun Tet, and if you look at Rashi, first of all, actually, yeah. Well, look at the Rashi. The truth is, the second Rashi on the page you should look at. He gives an interesting definition of shliach, of shlichut. But let's go look at the Rashi, like about a third of the way down or a quarter of the way down. He says, ani me'apech b'charara. And he says, mechazer achareha lischot ba min ha'hefker. He's looking for this. I guess he's trying to find it, and it's hefker. Or maybe the balabai will give it to him for free. But not that he's trying to buy it, that he's trying to get it from hefker. Nikra Russia, he's called, if somebody tries to take it from this ani before he got it, he's called a Russia. Sheyored l'chaye chavero, that he's interfering with the livelihood of his friend. Interesting, Rashi says friend and not dafka ani. But is it because he's an ani? Or is it any interference with somebody's livelihood? But it seems to be from hefker. He says from hefker. That's the case. What was the case in the Gemara in Kiddushin that we were talking about here?
It's trying to buy a field, and he's in the negotiation, and someone else takes it ahead of him. So I can't remember who the Rebbeim are.
Exactly. Rav Gidl was trying to buy a field, and Rabbi Abba quickly bought it when he was like looking at it. And then eventually they went to the rabbis, and Rav Abba came to the rabbis, and the rabbis said, "Ani mehapech becharara uba acher v'natla imenu mai." They asked him, "What is the din of somebody who goes up to an ani who's trying to like decide mehapech becharara? He's turning over and over a piece of the way I understood it is like a piece of bread to decide whether he wants it or not. And then somebody comes and just says, well, you didn't acquire it yet. I'm just going to grab it. What's the din?" So Rabbi Abba himself says, Amar le nikra Russia. He's called a Russia. It's true that he's not a thief because the guy didn't acquire it. And then he says, and the rabbis say back to him, Ve'ela mar mai taima avidachi. But you yourself have done this. Why did you do this? If it's called a Russia. Amar le lo hava yadana. I didn't know. I didn't know he was doing this. I didn't know he was trying to buy the field. So wait, so this, and he says, if I'd known, I wouldn't have done it. So he says, give it back to him. And he says, I'm not going to give it back. I would give it back to him, but the other guy won't take it. In any case, there's this statement that an ani is me'apech b'charara is like a metaphor. And he's saying, it reminded me of David and Natan, where Natan comes to David and says, what is the din of somebody who takes the last sheep of a poor man? Right? And David says the death penalty, which of course is not the din for thievery, but it's such a terrible thing. He's a Russia. He's taking from a poor person. And then Natan says, you're that man. Because he took Bathsheba, so it's exactly the same idea. You're that man who took from the Hara. And he says, you're right. He doesn't disagree. He agrees that getting involved in a deal, that somebody else is already trying to buy this land, is negotiating about the price, right? He's negotiating about the price. And the price is not fixed yet. And so he just jumps in and says, I'll buy it for, $10 more than whatever you were talking about. Says, you should have left it alone. You shouldn't have done that. All right, you know what? We'll stop here. I think we'll stop here. Next week we'll look at that Gemara in Kedushin. You can look at that Tosfot there. I didn't actually ask you to learn that Tosfot, right?
You did tell us.
You did. It is
Yeah.
on the sheet.
Oh, it is on the sheet?
Yeah.
All right, so next week we'll do the Tosfot. I see that is not to do proper justice to all of that. It's a very interesting discussion about exactly what a charara is and what when are you interfering with the livelihood of somebody else? When are you not? And what is an an? And is it only by an ani? Okay, you can actually. I'll send you another source to look at the Siman in Choshen Mishpat where it talks about this. Reish Lamed Zayin, I believe. Okay, so we'll end here. We did that Rambam. I think that was very interesting. I have his theory, actually. I never studied with Rav Soloveitchik, but I know one thing, that he would learn the Gemara with the Rambam. And I think that the idea is kind of like what we did today, which is if you read, let's say, the Rashba or the Ritva, so he tells you what he's thinking. He tells you how to learn the Gemara. And then you know what he's thinking. You just read it. That's what he's thinking. As long as you can understand what he's saying, maybe it's a little bit hard, but that's it. The Rambam doesn't tell you how he learns the Gemara. He just says some halachas. So then it's your job to figure out how he learned the Gemara. And I think that gives creativity to the teacher or to the learner. That you can come up with anything. You can't prove me wrong. I can come up with any explanation for the Rambam because he doesn't tell me how he learned, so I can come up with. So then Rav Soloveitchik can come and say, well, I want to figure out, I want to get into the head of the Rambam. And I think we did that today. One other thing I want to say, Yeah, why didn't he Taka learn those opinions? And I wanted to, what Noam was saying, why didn't the Rambam go by the Stam? And I think part of it is that like they're unnamed, because so they're unnamed. In other words, we have no guarantee that those opinions were valid. When we have a statement of Rav Papa, he's stating a halacha. We have a statement of Reish Lakish. We have a statement of halacha. But when we have a terutz to a kasha, that was just a terutz that we came up with to prove that the statement wasn't necessarily right. But that doesn't mean we stand by that statement 100%. In other words, it was forced on us because of the circumstances. So the Rambam would rather go with named sources that are actually coming as statements of halacha, that the rabbi says this is a halacha. That's why I'm saying it's a little bit more than just they're named. They're named, but they're statements of halacha. They're not just terutzim on a kasha that I had. And if you wouldn't have had that kasha, I might not have said that. It's the difference between a thesis and a dialectic. If it's just a dialectic and I'm just arguing, so then I said that because you asked that. It doesn't prove anything. You can't prove anything about Plato. He says something because the other guy said that. It doesn't mean he really believes it. It's just a thing that he said to answer the question. But when you come up with a priori statement, like Rav Sheshet did and like Rav Papa did, then that's a halacha. We can paskin like that. If you have no choice, if you have nothing else but a stam, but a statement and then an ukimta, and then that's it, then go with the ukimta. That's what you got. But when you have an ukimta and then also a statement by a named source who says this is an actual halacha, and that answers it, then I don't need to use I don't need to go in the sort of the path of less authority. So I think that's the explanation of the Rambam. He's going with the more authoritative. And there may be places in the Rambam where he goes by an ukimta, but that's because there wasn't a null alternative. That was a better alternative. That's how I want to explain that. Okay, shkayach everybody, laila tov.
Shkayach.
Ugh.
Okay.
Shkayach.